What's going on? One of the biggest questions in local SEO is, why am I not ranking on Google Maps? And I think reviews and how are reviews calculated, right? Like, how do they weigh into how well we're doing or not, is a really important question. And it's one that people don't talk about a lot as to like, how does it work? I think people talk about like get reviews and maybe some things in there, but they don't really talk about like, how does that impact me? How is Google thinking about this? And that's why I think one of the best things we can do is look at how Google scores and gives points to people who are giving the reviews. Now, if you're not aware, local guides get points when they do certain reviews, tasks on Google Maps. And I don't think Google is really so advanced that they don't use that same system in some way in how they decide your reviews and how they impact your business. So what I've done today is go through some competitors, some businesses, and I've done some analysis and used this scoring system, which I'll go through right here, to get a better idea of, you know, if we can find some correlations here, something interesting to learn, right, about ranking on Google Maps, right? So let's jump into this and I'll give you some of my thoughts. So let's just start here with the few pieces of information here I think that matter. So when a reviewer gives a review, they get points. I'm not going to count this because I think this is kind of like the points just to the reviewer for giving the review. But next we have, does the review have more than 200 characters? If yes, it gets a 10-point bonus. What is the rating of the review? So that means if you are getting 5-star reviews, you get 5 points. And I think that kind of replaces the base level, right? If all your reviews are 5-star, you can basically assume your base level is 5 points per review, with a 10-point bonus if your reviews are more than 200 characters. So that's already super interesting, meaning you get 3 times the benefit, right, if the review has the 10 or the 200 characters or more of text. Next, we have, if it has a photo, it gets another 5 points. And then if it has a video, it gets 7. But I'm not going to get too deep into that. What I want to do is look at kind of these 3. And then I've added my own to this that I think is helpful, which is the local guide account. So what I did was I went through a few competitors and a business, and I looked at, how many characters does the review have? Did a local guide write the review? And I gave 5 points for that. The number of reviews, that doesn't do anything here, but I wanted to have that data. I gave a recency score, which means I gave up to 5 points if the review was within a year, and then dropped a point for every year. That's just whatever, but I think there's some kind of recency here that matters. And then they were all basically 5-star reviews. So what I have here is a 5, 10 for the characters, 5 for local guide, and then up to 5 for recency to give us a total score. And then I added those scores up. Now, then there's another factor here that I'm going to dive into, but just on the outset, this is where they ranked, right? So right off the bat, you can see here that even though competitor number 1 has the most reviews, right, they ranked 3rd, with competitor 2 ranking 1st and then 2nd, and then the new listing here with 37 reviews having a total score of 665. So it would be interesting to add a lot more listings here, but it's a lot of work. So this does give us, kind of an idea. Look, these aren't too far off from each other, really, as far as numbers. I think the 100 mark, there's a, you know, psychological thing for customers of why that does well. But now what I did, and I think this added a nice information boost to what we're doing here to really help better understand this. So what I did was I said, okay, now let's make a relevancy score. So for the search term that we're trying to rank for, let's look at the percentage of that keyword showing up in the review. So as you can see here, now when we take that math, we get a keyword relevancy here. I also add the photo points here. That doesn't matter too much. It wasn't enough to make an impact. But this keyword relevancy, I think, is super interesting. So when we put this keyword relevancy here, we see that competitor number 2, or our number 1 ranking slot, had a 64% relevancy. Our competitor number 3 in the second slot, 57%. Number 1, ranking number 3, had a 20%, 21%. And then our new listing here has a 51% relevancy. So with that, when we do the math, now all of a sudden our total number is in a descending order from competitor, you know, from the first result down to the 4th result. I don't want to act like I've uncovered something here. You know, this could all be wrong, right? I think it's in the right direction, but none of this math is valid. I'm not trying to tell you I have some kind of, you know, insider information here, but I think that this keyword relevancy is really interesting as a thought process, and it almost makes me, because look, it's going to reduce you based on the keyword, right? You're still getting the points generally from the total, added to your total. But the question becomes, you know, if you have 1,000 reviews with no mention or no text at all, is that going to hurt your ability to rank? Maybe the reviews that don't have any words in them don't apply at all. I don't know. But I think the idea here is really interesting that, one, if you're not getting reviews that have the length that get you over that 200 character length on, you know, as much as possible, that's a big difference, right? A third of the difference in your potential there. Number 2 is if you're not getting photos, those photos are going to add another benefit to everything that you're doing. And then number 3, right? If you're wondering why it's hard to pivot, maybe you were doing something different with your business and you changed over, right? Or you've added a new service and you're having trouble there, or you're just not getting keywords in your reviews. That might have a more dramatic impact on your ability to rank, even if you're getting a similar amount of reviews as your competitors. So whether or not the keyword relevancy matters, I think the first part of this is really important, just getting the length and getting the reviews. But I think there is something to this keyword relevance and making sure to get your target keywords. I don't even think they have to be exact. They just need to be general. Roofing contractor, roof repair. All those are probably thrown into the same bucket if you're a roofer. It just needs to mention roof, roofing, roofer, something like that, right? So try to get reviews that have the keywords in it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go see if I can get some of these keywords that I have on this listing here. If I can get more of those, because a lot, and that's what's interesting too, right? You go start a new Google business profile, you go get 20 of your friends to go write you a review, or 10 or whatever. And you just tell them, give me a star rating. So they don't write anything. And you have all these blank reviews at first. I think people do this all the time, or just short reviews. what if those actually aren't helping you as much as you thought because they don't have your terms in them? So I'm going to go try to get a lot of these reviews on this fourth listing. I'm going to try to get keywords put into those and text put into those and see if that can help me improve this. Because if I'm at 100%, right, keyword relevancy, meaning if I can get the other reviews in here to all write and talk about the service, I may be able to surpass this number 3 spot. And I think that is a really interesting way to look at all of this. So, I'd love to hear anybody else's thoughts on this. How do you think about reviews? And, I would be interested if other people have been doing tests on this, or if you've looked at your reviews versus your competitors and, even though you have more or whatever, you're saying, this makes more sense as to why maybe I'm not ranking very well for certain keyword terms. Right. So, all right, cool. Well, that's all I got for today. Let me know what you think. See you later.